I'm talking to Helen Thompson, who also has memories of the Italian POWs. Now, Helen, you remember baked potatoes particularly.
Yes, they were always lovely. We'd wait for hear the truck coming down the hill as they were singing their song towards where we lived, and out the front was a big culvert, and on one side was a big water tank too as well on the ground. And they'd pull up and the Aussie guys would get all organised with this culvert, and light a fire up and wait a while.
Yep.
And they'd do a little bit of singing, and then in the meantime the guys would put all these potatoes in and bake them.
In the ashes?
In the ashes, yeah, just like we do today in the barbie.
Yep.
But I've never tasted potatoes so lovely. I don't know if they were just wrapped in butter or what, because they didn't have alfoil in those times.
Of course. You lived out Lynch Street area on the road to Bathurst, didn't you?
Yes, just before the old railway bridge that's now gone, the overhead one.
And your place actually backed onto basically the camp, didn't it?
Yes, yes.
Now tell me about how the escapees stole your lollies.
Oh, yes. Well, I was, just 5 then, and ready to go to school. And we had our little favourite cubby up the back on the side of the hill now, just across from the old rifle range now. And we had a lovely cubby in the rocks, and we used to hide some of the lollies in a little jar in our cubby for when we went back up to play. And the Italian guys used to throw the lollies to us as they were leaving on their truck.
Yep.
To go back out.
But you had a stash in the cubby house, and just after the breakout, you were very disappointed to find that they weren't there anymore.
They stole our lollies, yes. Some discarded clothes. We were told not to go back up there weeks after, but of course we had to go and check out on our supplies. and our lollies were gone.
And so we assume that the Japanese who broke out helped themselves to your lollies.
That's exactly right. I hope they enjoyed them.
Yeah. Now your dad worked for the council at the time, and on the night of the breakout, tell me about the big rap on the door.
Yes, well, my dad, who probably a lot of people would know, Tom Bartley, and we got this big knock on the door, and Mum went out and came back with this look on her face, and they'd called Dad because he wasn't allowed to go off in the wartime. Dr. Mr. Whiteley kept him as the man to do any of the work that needed done in town, or with electricity, of course.
Yeah.
And that's when he got the call that there'd been a breakout and they had to get the power back on as quick as they could up at the camp.
So he went back up.
He was up there, yes, and as he arrived they were throwing all their blankets and possibly whatever they could get to stop the barbed wire.
And getting over the barbed wire.
They were jumping up over to escape.
Right, and that would be heading down towards the back of where you were living.
Just a bit further up, yeah. No,
yeah.
It's up near where the big memorial, yes. Well, not far, because the old tip was there.
And what did, as a 5-year-old, you must have been scared.
Well, we were frightened. I very close to my dad, and really panicked and waited until he got home, but not quite old enough to know how serious it was, because there were bullets flying, around them, trying to get the power back on.
Then you were then banned from going up anywhere near the old cubby house.
Oh yes, not allowed.
But being headstrong and
5-year-old, we had to go and investigate. Our lollies were very important.
Well, that's right, and they'd been, because lollies in those days wouldn't have been that common. So we think the lollies were probably made by the Italians.
I think so, because they used to, if they didn't stop and do their baked potatoes under the old culvert, they'd always have to keep going to get, from
out to wherever they were working.
Living, yeah. But if they didn't stop, they always threw us lollies.
Right, and that was where part of the stash had probably come from.
We kept to have up on the hill where we used to slippery slide down the rocks.
And then you'd get roused on because you'd go back with dirt all over you.
Dirt all over you, and no bottoms in my jeans.
Oh dear. And so the days after the breakout, what was the mood like in Cowra?
Yeah, well, I was quite young and just about to start school, so I guess we were a little bit excited, but Dad never, like most of the men, never talked much about what was going on, except that they got the power back on, and then for days we weren't allowed to go back up on the hill.
And there wasn't much information around either, was there?
Not really, no. Dad was very, quiet with us girls,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to frighten us.
Yep.
But seeing the other, the Japanese used to have to march past Nana's house where we were living.
Yep.
But the Italians were always lovely. You'd hear them singing as they came down Walters's Hill in their truck,
Yep.
and we'd know if they didn't
There
stop.
seems to be some confusion whether they had instruments with them. Do you recall?
No, I don't. They just had lovely voices, and I still hear now some of the four, the great four that sing, and think of those. They sing so lovely. But a lot of them were coming home. They worked out at the Edgell Gardens, and they'd come past our way going back out to the camp.
And toss a few lollies out?
And still toss lollies, yeah. Well, we didn't get many lollies in
those days. No, of course, no.
And
Would
I
have
think
been.
a lot of these were homemade, like they'd made up something.
Yep. Well, that's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that with us, Helen.
No, my pleasure, Gary.